isn't one of the core issues job security, and that's what's united people in terms of you're seeing a trend of downsizing and moving jobs overseas. Weren't some of the principles that brought the individual workers together to say, what can we do to keep our jobs and keep our business thriving?
Um, Job security, of course, is a principal issue with the worker on the floor. The problem for the UAW, I believe, is that they they made a decision to trade jobs for wages, and and it was kind of a calculated decision. They wanted to maintain the level of wages and benefits in the big three, and in order to maintain that, they were willing to give up job security. Although in every contract that we voted on, they said we won new agreements on job security. In fact, with each contract, we lost more jobs. Those jobs were outsourced not only to foreign countries, but they were outsourced within the United States to non-union plants or to second-tier suppliers that may be unionized but work for considerably less wages. This helped to maintain the level of wages, but the UAW, continued to shrink and shrink. Um, I think the principal fault for the UAW was that when we shifted from being an organizing union to a business union. And when we became a business union, they were mainly concerned with servicing a small amount of members. Not a small amount, they wanted the largest as they could, but they shifted the focus from organizing to servicing. And in that period, they adopted the cooperative model of dealing with the company. They embraced teamwork, um, and saw and sought to convince members that the goals of the company and the union were one and the same, which is naive and ignores the history, of any company. Every company has the concern of limiting wages and benefits so that they can make greater profits, and doing it by any means that they can. Uh, if the union had organized better, uh, we wouldn't have had the competition from the foreign plants that we have. But we failed to organize the transplants, and we especially failed to organize in the parts sector. Now, the UAW at one time, about 80% of parts manufacturers were unionized. Today, I believe it's less than 20%. Um, and a lot of these plants just moved down south. And the UAW wasn't aggressive enough in organizing, wasn't perhaps smart enough in how they organized. And granted, it's tough to organize in the United States. The laws are not favorable, but they never have been favorable. Um, if the UAW had set up a local union hall or an office across the street from every transplant in the United States and said, we're here, we're going to stay here in this community, and we're going to organize this plant, and open that hall to the community for any kind of social action that community might need, I think we would have been in a better position. And then hired local people to operate that hall, to man that organizing effort. Instead, we built a country club up in northern Michigan and sunk millions of dollars into golf. And we didn't organize any of the transplants. We didn't maintain organizing in the parts industry. And when they did make efforts, they would send people from the north, from Detroit, down to these local communities in the south, for example, and they didn't speak the language. We failed to organize. And that set up competition right within the United States.
Could you address the impact on retirees and those who had worked along a plan of getting their 25, 30 years and their pension. What has been explain a little bit about the decertification of a union, or when someone, or when a plant leaves, what happens to those union members? Do they lose their right to vote? What happens to their representation?
You know, I just talked to a 80-year-old gentleman the other day who was a UAW member, worked at a Kelvinator, an appliance factory here in Grand Rapids. And they closed up after, he had been there 27 years. And they had moved part of the plant down south in order to evade a union contract that said if the plant moves within 65 miles, the worker would be able to stay with his job. So they moved it down south, and then 3 months later moved it to Greenville. Effectively evaded the contract and cut him out of a job. And so after 27 years, he gets about $270 a month. It's tough for a union to fight these companies. And that's why, you know, we said it was so important to recognize that these people are not our friends. We are not on their team, that they will do whatever they can to cut wages and to evade contracts and to not pay the pensions and the benefits that are due. Now, all my life as a UAW member, I was told that I had health care and pension for my retirement. That was being set aside. When I arrived at that 30-year market and retired, I found out that General Motors had not set aside any money whatsoever for health care. While we were working, that money should have been set aside in a trust fund. And indeed, they charged the customer for that expense. They would complain with every contract, oh, look at these union guys did to us this time. We have to raise the price of the car because they want more for their retirement. They would charge the customer, but they didn't set the money aside. They used that extra money to pay bonuses to executives. They invested it in plants overseas. They paid it out to shareholders. But at the end of the day, the money was not there. And this is what really galls the retirees now at this point is it's kind of like paying on a mortgage. We upheld our end of the bargain, of the contract. We made our payment every month for 30 years. And at the end of the 30 years, they said, oh, sorry, but you don't own that. Our contention in Soldiers of Solidarity was that Delphi had done this. They had taken profits generated from the labor in North America. They took that money and invested it overseas. And it was very methodical. They would close plants here, open plants in Mexico, Brazil, Europe, China. And in bankruptcy, they said those assets could not be touched, that they were excluded from the bankruptcy laws in the United States. Well, our position was that labor had a legitimate lien on that capital investment, that we should benefit from the investments made off of our labor. That was not the case. The other part, at Delphi, another one of the manipulations was that all of the pension credits that we had accrued at General Motors were shifted into the Delphi plan. So for example, in 1999, I had 20 years pension credits with General Motors. That was all shifted to Delphi, a company that had not even existed prior to 1999. And in that 99 spin-off agreement, they agreed that they would guarantee the pension and the benefits, General Motors would, for Delphi retirees and employees, until 2007.